first of all, thank you all for being here. I hope that a little bit of upbeat music got you in the right mood. One of the reasons we're doing our North Carolina Center for Optimizing Military Performance virtual launch is to get people excited about what we're doing, because I think the capabilities we have to deliver solutions is exciting for the state of North Carolina, for our member organizations, and for the DoD. So just real quick to go through the agenda, we'll have a nice introductory talk from Congressman Price with a little bit of remarks. I'll introduce him in just a moment here. We're going to show a little video that we took from the Tech Palooza event last month that was down at ETI in Red Springs. Then we'll come back. I'll talk a little bit about what is NCCOMP, so folks have a little bit of a baseline understanding of it. Then we're going to have a second talk, one from Congressman Hudson, which we really appreciate both of the congressmen being able to be on here with this today. Then we're going to have our plant colors talk, and we're going to save a few minutes at the end for a little wrap up and Q&A session. So again, folks, really appreciate you being here today. Thank you for bringing up our speakers. So I'm not going to read. I'm not one of those people who likes to read people's bio. By the way, the last thing it says is he really doesn't need an introduction. So the only thing I'll do, sir, is I'll throw out there that you display one of our most important characteristics that we ask for in NCCOMP members, and that's flexibility, because you are a UNC Chapel Hill graduate and you taught at Duke. And it's a rhetorical question, sir, but how do you do that during basketball season? Is it possible to have peace on campus?
A lot of flexibility. You got it right.
There you go, sir. So on a serious note, though, as you do see in Representative and Congressman Price bio, he strongly has supported for a long time NC Biotech, NC Academia, NC Research, and those are key elements of the NCCOMP effort. So I'll also say that both of our congressmen have another important trait in common with NCCOMP members, and that's they're inclusive. And there's no joke with that one, right? So they're working across the aisle to get things done in Washington. And that's what we're really trying to do with NCCOMP as well, is get people who may have historically not worked together, working together to deliver solutions to improve the health and performance of DoD service members. So Congressman David Price, appreciate you being here. Sir, the floor is yours. Over.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate your having me for this launch of the North Carolina Center for Optimizing Military Performance. And that does lead to a pretty natural acronym, NCCOMP. So thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to hear more about this effort and to contribute in whatever I can, in whatever way I can. I represent the 4th Congressional District, which does include RTI and other participants on the call today. It's the Research Triangle area. It keeps getting drawn and redrawn, but more or less it's the Research Triangle area. And of course, the whole area is a source of great pride and a source of responsibility as we think about the kind of values we reflect, the kind of capacities we have here, and the way of making those into more and more of a national asset. That's one reason I'm excited by this effort and glad to be here today, because I do think it's a reflection of the unique research and development and academic and business synergy that North Carolina, particularly our part of North Carolina, has to offer. Our community has many leading examples of the strategic value of public-private partnerships and collaboration. Of course, I'm particularly knowledgeable and appreciative about RTI and its role in general and in this consortium, but there are many others, and we'll hear more about that very shortly. We do know firsthand the benefits of bringing together military and civilian leaders from the public sector, bringing them together with academic experts, entrepreneurial, corporate, nonprofit, community members to identify and solve challenging problems. And the problem we're addressing today is a challenging problem, making certain that our service members on the front lines have the resources and services they need to be as healthy and effective as they possibly can be. We've had efforts in Congress, as all of you know. I've been part of those to ensure that the Department of Defense is focusing on human performance. There are typically provisions in both the defense authorization and defense appropriations bills focused on this. But I think it's safe to say that too often still, our efforts related to human performance are somewhat siloed and somewhat unconnected. That's why, particularly as an appropriations committee member, I focused on comprehensive human performance optimization, research, and development, a way that bridges gaps and values the importance of understanding how the physical and the mental are integrated. And that's a statement, I suppose, of what this consortium is going to focus on, and it certainly reflects a continuing need. So we're looking for smart and comprehensive and holistic solutions for our men and women in uniform. That's what this is all about. North Carolina, as I'm sure everyone knows, is home to the third largest military population in the entire country. That makes us especially strong stakeholders in this, and excited about it. Excited to bring everyone together to offer diverse benefits to the partners here, the Department of Defense, and most importantly, the service members themselves. So congratulations to all of you who have put this together, to the NC Comp team. And we look forward to, of course, learning more about this and how the federal government in various aspects can be an active and effective partner. We will follow the work you do, but more importantly, we'll try to support it and be helpful in any way we can. So I look forward to the discussion today, and I thank you again for including me.
Okay, so we lost our slides, it looks like, for a minute there. Sir, thank you so much for your presentation. I just wish you wouldn't have stolen so many of my notes on what I was going to say. Although that really does, it sets it up so well. So Lindsay, any chance you could share your screen and we'll go ahead and get our slides back up? Because it looked like Shane got dropped off. But I'll keep us moving along anyway. So what you saw right before we switched was the other speakers are going to be here. Well, perfect timing, Shane. Thank you for that. So this leads into a little bit about how did we get started? So where did it all begin? It all began last August when I was talking to Mary Beth Thomas, Steve DeLellis, and Kathy Seidner from UNC System, who we don't have her picture up there. We weren't sure if she could make it. And Kathy, I understand you're on. So that's the four-legged stool that were the plank holders originally for NC Comp. And sir, you set up some of the reasons why we have it. But I'll give the top line messages. We started talking about how many groups, both in academia and industry, were already doing DoD health and human performance work. And I asked the question, who's pulling it all together? And the answer was nobody. So that was the birth of NC Comp. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Shane. So we thought we had a solution, but we didn't need to go look for what's the problem. Because as you alluded to, Congressman Price, there's a recognition of the challenges in human health and performance. And I'll tell you, I think we think about it in three levels. You're going to see a lot of threes in this brief or in this discussion. And the three levels are at the DoD level, you nailed it. There's still some stovepipes. I will tell you, I retired from the Army January of 20. They're getting better. They were getting better before I retired. They're getting better now. A lot of help with Congress pushing them to be more integrated, but there's still stovepipes. And so those stovepipes make a need for some connective tissue. And I'll talk in a minute about how NC Comp helps with that. In addition, there's bandwidth challenges. There's not enough people doing the work in the DoD. And the third part of that is there's a recognition that there is innovation out in industry and in academia. And that's where we need to go as we modernize. And we need to go to stay competitive with other people who want to be the only world superpower. The second level is at the state. And again, Congressman Price, you went there. We are one of the top leaders in how many service members we have. Unfortunately, we're not a top leader in the defense budget coming to North Carolina. We're not getting the defense contracts. We're around 21 or so among all the 50 states. That's not good enough, I don't think, with all the capability we have here. And, I was on a call earlier with John Harden from the North Carolina Department of Commerce. And we were talking about, we just really, maybe it's the focus. We need a more focus on going after the DoD. We're great in biotech, right? A lot of where your district, Congressman Price, is that strong efforts and across the state. But we didn't really have that focus and we haven't really provided that bandwidth. So that second level is the state has a challenge that NC Comp would help with. And the third one is our member organizations do. A lot of them haven't played in the DoD ecosystem before, or they've wanted to play a little. It's challenging. It is difficult. There's bureaucracy to work through. And I know both of our Congress members here have worked to try to reduce that bureaucracy, but a lot of that's still there. And small businesses to survive can't go get all the business development, those things. So there's a challenge for our members, and some of our larger or our nonprofits, like where I work at RTI, are looking for how do we find other groups that are doing cutting edge innovation. And that's what we get from our across the state. So how does NC Comp solve those problems? And I'll talk a little bit about what's on here, but we do it at 3 levels as well. So at the DoD level, we become that connective tissue. So there's efforts that are going on, even here within the state of Fort Bragg, on one side of the wire on the special operations community, that they may not be tracking on the 82nd, 18th Airborne Corps side, and vice versa. We have performers in both worlds. When we share it among ourselves and share it among them, we become that connective tissue that helps break down the stovepipes, and we share that knowledge to deliver solutions. The second level for the state is we're going to bring in more funding, because when you have groups that work together, you go farther. I think you actually go faster as well. And we're going to have teams that are hard to beat from anywhere else. And oh, by the way, we are North Carolina centric, but we are not North Carolina exclusive. So you'll see there are members that are outside the state of North Carolina. We're working with whoever's going to help us deliver the best solution. Again, when you do that, people are going to come in here. They're going to see how great it is to be in North Carolina. And we're going to hopefully have some businesses that say, I'm relocating. I want to be in North Carolina. So it's going to help the state with that. And then on third level for members, we haven't had that hard of a time getting members. You tell people about the way we're pulling together teams and how you sign an NDA, you share a quad, and we start linking you up with potential opportunities and putting teams together so we have the best from different organizations going after work. People are ready to join. So we help those teams. And the smalls who need some business intel, we provide that for them. So I talked about what the problem was and what the solutions are, but I'll give you a little bit of details about what do those solutions look like. And again, this was alluded to in our opening remarks. We have, from what we like to call within NC Comp and elsewhere, soup to nuts here in North Carolina. We have fantastic academic and research organizations doing everything at the basic research level. So they're looking at solutions that are going to be out there in 2028, 2035 for groups that like Army Futures Command is looking for. So we're ready in 2035 to fight in multi-domain operations. But we also have groups who are developing the prototypes, right? They're taking that basic research, they're developing it, they're making it something that a service member can put their hands on, or a knowledge product that a service member can give feedback and say, that's what I need, this is where I can apply it. And we have unbelievable test and evaluation groups within the state of North Carolina. So you're about to see in a couple of minutes this Tech Palooza video. That was done at ETI, which is down in Red Springs. So that's an area that really could use a little boost economically. And James Freeman is down there, and he's doing great things for the community. And service members and groups at Fort Bragg are aware of ETI, and they're going out there and using their test and evaluation facilities because they have some things you can do with unmanned aerial vehicles and countering those, and a track outside you could test unmanned vehicles and things. It's really a fantastic location, and we have others like that. And we have groups whose job it is to get these things out to our customers. And the last part I want to focus on there is one of the things we have pushed everybody for NC Comp is the DoD doesn't keep organizations in business predominantly. You got to have dual use. And it's not that hard if we're doing health, because there's a lot of medical, EMTs, groups like that who could use the technologies that we're developing and the knowledge products. And the other one is sports. A lot of the things we're developing, elite athletes are looking for the physical, the mental, the cognitive capabilities that we can deliver at NC Comp. So we're really focusing on that. And then just quickly, you said another word, Congressman Price, holistic. So we're looking at both physical and mental. And within that mental, we're looking at performance, both cognitive and psychological. So we put people through a lot of stressors that can tax them mentally, physically, and emotionally or psychologically. And we have groups that are playing in all 3 of those areas. So we really are trying to get them to work together so we deliver holistic solutions and not piecemeal. So how do we do it? We do it along 3 stages. So we're looking to make sure we cover the research continuum of, or the treatment continuum and the performance continuum of, can you prevent people from being injured? Musculoskeletal injuries are the #1 challenge to units and individuals being ready to do their mission. And if they do get injured, which happens, can we return them to duty quickly? And can we do it efficiently? And then the second stage we look at is, we know our service members are high performers and very healthy in general, but can we keep them there when we put them through the multi-stressor environment where we don't let them eat enough? We don't let them sleep enough. We have things that they have to do and see that are beyond what a lot of us who haven't been in the military haven't known you had to do. And when you lose a buddy, you do enough of that, it impacts you on the mental health side. So can we keep you physically and mentally and cognitively functioning in those environments? Because that's where we're going to be for the foreseeable future. And then finally, can we take you beyond your current level? So we have current technologies that are great for physical, pretty good for cognitive, and okay for psychological. That's probably the level of maturity of where technologies are. But can we take it and continue to improve on them? And I will tell you, from the people we have in the NC Comp team, we can. So that kind of lays out the whole NC concept. And now, Shane, let's go to the next slide. This is what, when we talk to folks and we talk about the benefit of economic development, this was a cluster analysis that was commissioned by the Defense Alliance in North Carolina. And there's everywhere people are doing health and human performance work. So it's not all along RTP. It's not all focused over in Charlotte. It's not all around Bragg or Lejeune. You see there's dots everywhere. There are groups doing this work either in the DoD or they have capabilities we can apply in the DoD. So this is one of my favorite slides when we talk to people about either coming on to NC Comp or what can NC Comp do for them. Next slide, please. This is it's a great lineup. So I will tell you, we have capabilities, and I started to write notes for this, and I thought, okay, I'll be done about 3 o'clock. And I know some of you have places to be. So I'll just highlight a few things. You see on there are great academia. We have we have the 16 universities in the UNC system. Thank you, Kathy Seidner. We have Duke as well. And I'll tell you, of one of those, I just want to highlight, we have North Carolina A&T State University. That is the #1 HBCU for producing engineers. What do you think the DoD needs? They need more engineers. And to have an HBC do it, there's a recognition about the diversity and the quality that you get out of our HBCUs. And we happen to have the #1 in the nation in NCAT, and they're a part of NC Comp. That's one of the things I think we're most proud of. You see that we also have big companies. You have a SAS, you have an RTI on there. And you have small companies, right? So we have small companies in physical, like a TRX Elite or a Katsu, who, by the way, has done things that were used by Olympians and Paralympians. And TRX Elite is in the Army manuals, right? And I could name each of these other small businesses who are doing early work that can be done for TBI. We have groups that are doing textiles. We have great textiles at NC State. I mean, there's just complementary efforts in academia, industry, large businesses, nonprofits, and smalls across this whole group you see here, and it continues to grow. Next slide, please. Okay, you finally get a break from my gravelly voice. And at this point, I would like to go ahead and introduce, we're good, right? Representative Hudson, we have you on the line, sir?
I'm here.
Fantastic. So I'll just do again, just like for Representative Price, I'll say both of you bring something else in your support to NC Comp, and that's diversity. Diversity of the people you represent, diversity of the parties you represent, and the capabilities that come from within your districts. And again, we talked about Congressman Price with the Research Triangle area, but you have Fayetteville. Some would call that the center of the Army universe. Some in Fayetteville sometimes call it the center of the entire universe. I'm an Army guy, I could say that. And you have it all the way around. We were looking at the map this morning. Your district stretches. It's big all the way out to Kannapolis and that whole area, Concord. So you're right out there on the edge of Charlotte. And so you have rural communities and small businesses, and we have suburbia, and we have urban. We literally are representing the entire state just with the two of you. So, sir, I really appreciate you being on here. And as we see in your bio, you have really looked out for the health and the well-being and the performance of service members at Fort Bragg and in veterans in the Fayetteville and surrounding areas and all the way through your district. And your record speaks for itself, sir. So I will just pass it to you now. Congressman Richard Hudson, thanks for being here today, sir.
Thank you so much, Dennis. It's really a pleasure to be here with you, and it's always a pleasure to share the stage with David Price, who I can tell you nobody works harder for the state of North Carolina. He is our only member of the Appropriations Committee, which means every problem I have, I take to David, and he has never once turned me away or failed to deliver for the people of this state, and particularly for our military. He really has a heart for our military men and women and their families, and so it's an honor to be here with David today and to serve with him in the Congress. And I want to thank RTI and NC Comp for for what you are doing. This is so important. As you alluded to, Dennis, my top priority is the men and women who at Fort Bragg and their families and taking care of them. And DOD, I think years ago, finally came to a realization that we spend a whole lot of money maintaining equipment and vehicles and helicopters, but those aren't our most important assets. Our most important assets are the men and women in uniform, and we need to be spending more resources maintaining them, and both from a mental health and a physical health standpoint. And so I think DOD has made great strides, but there's a whole lot of work left to do, and so I think the work that NC Comp is going to be tremendous in helping us move forward in both mental health and in the physical performance for our men and women in uniform. So I'm excited about that. But secondly, another priority I have is something you alluded to. I want jobs right here in North Carolina. I want us to be providing the services and the things that our military bases need, and for us to be sort of on the cutting edge on this mental and physical performance area, which I think is the future for the military. For us to be on the cutting edge, I think is incredibly important. I think it'd be good for North Carolina. It'd be good for our institutions here. It'd be good for jobs. And so this really is a perfect nexus of those two priorities. The other thing is, when our men and women get out of uniform, I want them to have jobs here in North Carolina. I want them to stay here. I don't want to lose them to other states. And so, again, I think the work of NC Comp creating these clusters of innovation will really be important as people are coming out of the service with expertise. Let's capture that expertise and put it to work here. So I'm proud to work alongside with NC Comp, and just in the last few years, I was thank you to David Price. He helped. I put in a request for $7 million in FY22 for medical advanced technology to prioritize research funding for programs like NC Comp. Thank you, David, for making sure that got through. And the last two Congresses have also really focused on a program in the Special Operations Command called POTF, Preservation of the Force and Family. That is, to me, the model. Every defense secretary since about 2016 that I've met with, I've talked about POTF, and I'll be honest with you, half of them had never heard of it, which is terrible. Even some secretaries of the Army didn't know about the program until I brought it up to. But my belief is we ought to have POTF for the whole Army. Not just for special forces. I mean, we ought to, every soldier that comes into basic training ought to get a baseline physical exam and a baseline mental exam, so that we can then track them and do all the things you were talking about, Dennis. To me, that's where the future ought to be. We're proving it in special forces right now, and I'm continuing to push for increases in the funding for the POTF. But also in this year's NDAA, I put a provision that requires a report on the human performance of current SOCOM programs, activities including physical conditioning, exercise physiology, kinesiology, nutrition guidance, rehab, mental skills training. Because one of the things I'm noticing is we're attracting some of the best people in the industry to the POTF program, whether it's trainers, whether it's mental health professionals. But the POTF program is a 5-year program, and it's reauthorized every 5 years. It's funded for 5 years. And if you're a very experienced, top-notch trainer working for the Army and your contract's coming up at the end of the year, and they can't guarantee you're going to get another 5 years, and you're getting an offer from the NFL and other places for a lot more money, in some cases we're losing those folks. And so one of the things I've asked is, can we create a more permanent funding stream for some of these positions? So that's just one of the questions that we're hoping to explore through the report that we've asked for through NDA this year, but hopefully can help us improve that program. But the work of NC Comp really is going to help us provide better data, help us fill in the gaps, even with the POTF program. And so I just see tons of possibilities here, and I'm really excited about the future. So I talked a little bit more than I meant to talk, but just really glad to be with you here today. Proud to be a partner with you, and really excited to see where NC Comp goes in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I have to say, you two are a great team. Congressman Price set up all my points, and you picked up all the ones I forgot to mention. Because, you know, it's an old adage, you recruit an individual, you retain a family. And if we don't look out for the family members, which you're doing, sir, then we lose good people. And the same thing with, it blows my mind, right? So some of us have been working with the Honor Foundation. That's a group that works with special operations soldiers, and they just started a new center right outside Fayetteville, in Southern Pines. And they're helping keep the people here, because there are skills that are in the special operations communities, and there are skills in the 82nd, and there are skills in the folks who are at Lejeune. I mean, our Marines have great capabilities, so keeping them in the state is an important thing. And so I'll make one other omission here, or a mistake I made. So I was going to show the video before you, Congressman Hudson, but you jumped right in and did such a great job. Shane, can we go ahead to the video then, and then we'll come back and let Mary Beth and Steve talk? And sir, you're going to, Congressman Hudson, you're going to love hearing from Steve DeLellis. He's been about 37 years in the SOF community, I think. So he's the right guy on this team. So Shane, this is a video that he's about to pull up that we recorded when we were down at the ETI Center down in Red Springs. And this was a Tech Palooza put on by James Freeman, and there were 8 of our NC Comp teams there, and we were able to show, again, that basic research all the way up, and you'll hear it talked about, all the way up through groups that were delivering solutions like KATSU and TRX Elite and New Fabrics. So you're going to see that in this 3 or so minute video. Shane, can you roll that, please? Over.
What an event like this Tech Palooza does. It allows us to bring together 8 different groups here from NC Comp of the 25 plus that we have in a center like ETI here in Red Springs, North Carolina, and it allows them to show we are an integrated solution.
The North Carolina Center for Optimizing Military Performance, or NC Comp, is a collaborative of North Carolina-based and North Carolina-relevant companies that work together to support the Department of Defense to create solutions for the warfighter for human performance and human performance improvement.
So when we talk about human performance in NC Comp, what we mean is whatever is going to help an operational unit achieve their mission.
That literally runs the full gamut from early research through dual-use commercialization.
Events like Techapalooza and being a part of the NC Comp presence here are really important for companies like ours to provide exposure, to provide an opportunity to socialize what we do.
Bionica's participation at the Techapalooza gives us great access to people who really have the problems. It can be very difficult in military innovation to interact with the person who actually experiences the issue that the requirement results from. We're not here selling stuff, we're here asking questions.
The event like today is valuable to get out and meet people doing things that are either similar to us or different to us. Hopefully we'll be able to work with in the future.
One of our goals of being a partner at NC Comp is actually to address a different kind of demographic, but also more importantly is to collaborate with everybody else in this fantastic organization. Add KATSU to something else, that 1 + 1 = 3.
North Carolina as a state is ripe for the development of DoD contracts and technologies that support the DoD. Our footprint here with the military bases and the active duty and the veteran population make us an ideal state for developing those technologies and bringing them to life and application within the Department of Defense.
Everything we do is focused on dual-use commercialization, so the DoD really doesn't like to buy things that are DoD-centric. We ensure that we have partner efforts going on in universities, professional sports teams, so that what our warfighter is getting is similar to what a professional athlete would also receive.
For example, a watch that can measure ozone, which we're using with asthmatic patients to correlate environmental exposure with asthma attacks.
Blood on demand, blood products are needed for humanitarian efforts in addition to efforts here at home. Meniscus injuries and cartilage injuries are really common, so these technologies can be applied both in DoD settings as well as civilian settings.
TRX Elite was designed for service members across the board. All these professionals, we call them win-at-all-cost professionals. These are individuals who are giving everything they have to be successful in their jobs, and they have very unique needs and requirements.
There are so many like projects going on in the DoD and across the services, and they're not very well connected. One of the things NC Comp does and the Fort Bragg Research Institute does is provide the connective tissue to ensure that, one, we reduce redundancy in fiscal spending, and two, we advertise the success of each one of those research projects across the whole spectrum of the DoD.
You come to NC Comp and we're going to get you everything from basic research to dual-use commercialized products that are meeting DoD needs right now and in the future to help the DoD win in a complex environment like multi-domain operations.
Thank you, Shane, and thanks to the video team, the RTI video team who put that together. Lindsay Suggs, thanks for all your efforts. And those, by the way, were not paid actors. So that's Steve DeLellis. He's a real guy. I mean, he's really one of our NC Comp guys. So I'm just saying that. So if Shane, if we can go to our next slide, please, because I'm going to reintroduce, or I'm going to introduce now the three of our plank members who I briefly introduced earlier before the congressman spoke. So next up, you're going to hear from Mary Beth Thomas. And Mary Beth Thomas is representing one of, again, our key elements is our biotech community. And she's a senior vice president of the North Carolina Biotechnology Center. And that's a group that is really already pulling together teams. And now she's a part of a team of people pulling together teams. So Mary Beth, really look forward to hearing what you have to say. Over.
Thank you, Dennis, and welcome to everybody. Really want to thank the RTI team and especially Dennis for setting up the virtual launch today. Before I say anything else, I really want to make sure everybody recognizes Dennis McGurk and Steve DeLellis, both just transitioned from the military in the last few years. They were incredible service members, but continue to lead here in North Carolina. And I have to tell you, they're just both stellar individuals, and I've been privileged to work alongside them on this effort. And so I really just wanted to make sure everybody recognized the gifts North Carolina has in two amazing people that decided to adopt North Carolina as their home. So really, really proud of that. I am Mary Beth Thomas. I work at the North Carolina Biotechnology Center. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the Biotech Center, it is a small nonprofit, independent nonprofit here in North Carolina that really focuses on growing the life sciences sector in North Carolina. We support our universities and help them translate technologies out of our universities and into the commercial sector. And we also support a lot of our small companies here to help them grow into their next stage of their future paths to success. I've been, Dennis, I have to chuckle, you and Kathy and I met when you first started to think about your transitioning. And I'm putting that back in fall of 2019, actually. And this was one of the ideas that we sat in a room and said, wouldn't this be great if we could do this? And it was only after Dennis landed at RTI. Thank you, RTI, for hiring Dennis McGurk and bringing him and cementing him in our North Carolina ecosystem. And it was really once Dennis landed and pulled Kathy and I back in, and then we got to add Steve DeLellis to the group after he transitioned out of the military and joined the Fort Bragg Research Institute and the Geneva Foundation, that really NC Comp really started to get put on jet fuel, honestly. I mean, it's really come together so well. And I have to tell you, the reason I'm involved with NC Comp is because my organization has always had a long history of doing a few things. One of those is identifying gaps. And how can we address the gaps, whether that's a gap in cash or capital for companies, a gap in services, do they need a lawyer or an accountant, or identify the gaps and try to fill the gaps. But for every gap that we see, we view those both as opportunities and an opportunity to provide a solution. And honestly, NC Comp does both of those things. In the sense, we're hopefully going to help our DoD partners, help them identify gaps, help them connect things better than maybe they can even do themselves. But I think North Carolina has we have a wealth of resources here in North Carolina to not only identify the gaps, but view the gaps as opportunities. And then we have the people to provide the solutions. And I think the other thing that really stands out about North Carolina in my mind, and I see it every day in my job, is we are a super collaborative culture. We are always trying to come together because we know we are better together than we are apart. And so I think that has really come together around NC Comp, and I'm super excited to be a part of it. I think the other thing that I'm sure Steve's going to talk a little bit when I hand off to him is we really have, and to Dennis's credit, we always come back to that dual use commercialization. That's part of my life. You know, as I work with military partners, that's one of my positions at the Biotech Center is trying to connect those things in as many ways as I can, is recognizing that the DoD may buy a lot of things just for our military. Medical and human performance does not need to be one of those. That is highly applicable across many, many other areas, medical as well as sports and athletics, just like Dennis noted. So thanks to everybody for joining today. Thank you, Dennis, for your leadership. And I will hand it back to Dennis. Over.
Thank you, Mary Beth. So next up, we're going to have Steve DeLellis talk. And I won't do much of an intro on Steve DeLellis other than two things I'll say. One, he's the only person I know who was every rank from private through all the way up through sergeant major and then all the way up to lieutenant colonel on the officer side. And then second thing I'll say about him is when I was a little kid, he's who I wanted to be when I grew up. Unfortunately, I'm all grown now and I can never do the things he did. So Steve, I should say something about FBRI. FBRI is an unbelievably important part of NC Comp. They are the part that is plugged into the operational needs, hence the Fort Bragg part of Fort Bragg Research Institute. And they've been doing what NC Comp's doing for the entire state. They've been doing it for Fort Bragg and the Fayetteville area, and they have just made so many things happen. So Steve, I'll pass it over to you. Over.
Thanks, Dennis. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the introduction. And I'll be brief here because Kathy Seidner has joined us, and we weren't sure she was going to be able to, and I want to ensure that she has some time to speak. She's an integral part of this team that helped start this program, and I want to make sure she has an opportunity to say hi and speak a little bit about the system that she runs. So Congressman Price and Congressman Hudson, thank you for everything you do. As Dennis said, I spent nearly 37 years in uniform. I spent 31 of those years here at Fort Bragg in uniform. So I appreciate all the support we have gotten over the years. And it seemed like a natural transition when I left the military, having spent so many years, several decades in my career here and understanding the inner workings of the Fort Bragg and surrounding communities, to work for an organization like the Geneva Foundation and help to stand up the Fort Bragg Research Institute. And what I really liked about Geneva's vision for the Fort Bragg Research Institute was kind of changing the role a little bit about how entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial success or entrepreneurs achieve success when working with the warfighters. Rather than having folks come knock on the doors of commanders on Fort Bragg to tell them about the next cool thing they've developed and how it might support their warfighters, the Fort Bragg Research Institute takes the needs, gaps, and requirements of the commands on Fort Bragg back out to the community and advertises those needs so that the entrepreneurs in North Carolina know what they should be working on if they want to do work with the Department of Defense. One of the key facets of the Fort Bragg Research Institute is to share all the lessons learned from the research that is accomplished and to advertise what research is going on at Fort Bragg so that other services, the folks at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base or the folks at Camp Lejeune, understand what it is we're doing at Fort Bragg so that we can reduce redundancy in federal research spending, sharing those lessons learned across the community so we don't have to repeat research for each service. And that really is huge, but not just to reduce redundancy. The key is to bring more federal dollars for research to North Carolina and to keep it in North Carolina from a napkin drawing, from whatever that concept may be, to support one of the gaps, needs, or requirements of the Department of Defense, and then keep those dollars here all the way through commercialization. You know, we have a fabulous manufacturing capability in North Carolina, and we want to ensure that those solutions are manufactured here to support our warfighters. And speaking of those solutions, one of the things we do with every research project is ensure that warfighters are included in the project throughout the entire continuum of the project, so that what we end up with in the end is a functional warfighter approved solution to meet those gaps, needs, or requirements, not just what the researcher tells us is the best solution available, but things that we know the soldier, the sailor, the airman or Marine will actually use. So it's been an absolute honor to have been affiliated with the Geneva Foundation and the opportunity to stand up the Fort Bragg Research Institute and work with the fabulous folks like Mary Beth and Kathy and watch Dennis transition and bring that spark to RTI to make what we have created here locally in the Sandhills a North Carolina wide project and bring in all the other players that are so important to research and to ensuring that while we may not be very high on the list of federal dollars being spent on research in support of the warfighter, to increase the amount of money we're bringing in here, and more importantly, bringing the talent to North Carolina to ensure that those dollars flow and remain here. So I appreciate your time. Thank you, Congressman Price and Congressman Hudson, for being here with us today. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kathy Seidner, because she really is a key facet of this project. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Steve, and welcome to everybody here. I'm excited to see you. I know at one point we had nearly 100 folks on here, so that's really exciting. I'll be really brief. I just kind of wanted to share that from a kind of, I guess, 30,000-foot view. The universities across our state do several $1 billion worth of sponsored research every year, and a big chunk of that, about 2/3 of it, is usually funded by the federal government. So, we absolutely need to be leveraging that for the benefit of the warfighter, because as a top state in terms of military personnel being located here, all the veterans that are here, their family members. It's also the second largest driver of our economy, so that economic development piece is critical. So, how can we better leverage all that research? We also have, in our UNC system, which is the 16 public universities, we have 21,000 military connected students. So that's service members and their family members. That's a lot of students. And we want to, I think Representatives Hudson and Price both talked about that workforce piece and trying to keep those folks here. We do want to keep them in the state and get them in our workforce, and so help them get degrees and then get the great jobs here. The specific kind of hook to NC Comp here, a big chunk of that research certainly pertains to human performance. We have, for example, at UNC Chapel Hill and at East Carolina, those are two of our medical schools. There's also a lot of research in public health that's relevant here. There's a TBI center at Chapel Hill that's doing a lot of active work with the special operations community. We have strength and conditioning, a world-class master's program at Appalachian State. And we recruit interns from a lot of these programs, by the way, to work down at Fort Bragg and other locations with some of the active units and commands, and providing on-site support to them. We also have, various innovation design labs. There's a lot of research at NC State University, across the School of Engineering, places like the Assist Center, which you all heard about earlier, developing sensors that are powered by the body that can detect things internally and externally around your environment. That's really exciting work. Research at UNC Charlotte and UNC Wilmington in data analytics, biometrics, with how AI can apply to biometrics. I could go on and on and on about all the things that are happening at our universities, but I think the point here is that we've got a lot going on at 16 campuses, plus the great research at Duke, and we do collaborate very closely. As Mary Beth mentioned, it's a very collaborative environment, a collaborative culture. There's a lot of joint projects. In fact, I think a couple years ago, when we were trying to get Army Futures Command to locate here, we pulled some stats and found that UNC, Chapel Hill, NC State, Duke, and RTI together do about $150 million in research a year. So that's a lot of collaboration. That's just in the Triangle area, not including the rest of the state. And then Dennis also mentioned North Carolina A&T. It's really a gem of our state. And actually, just this week, it was announced that they're going to lead a DoD-funded Center of Excellence in biotechnology. So that's really relevant work for this human performance area. So I think, if we can just pull all that together and tie it with the industry piece, which is what this whole organization is all about, pulling together the academic components, the industry components, and then the government side. I think one other key point here, and I'll end with this, we have a history, a good track record of partnerships with DoD. So UNC system, we've had system-wide partnership agreements with organizations like Army Special Operations Command, USASOC, and more recently with the 82nd Airborne Division and some others to provide innovation and research solutions to those commands. And that involves our students, our faculty, our staff, and all different forms of projects. We can send students as interns that are embedded. We can do research projects in a lab at a campus. We can do projects with companies to transition. So I'm really thrilled about NC Comp coming together and all the great work that can happen and will happen. Because this has been, I think human performance is the area that we've probably had the most capabilities in, and not been able to necessarily elevate it to the level that it's being elevated to now. So thanks again to Dennis for his leadership, and Steve and Mary Beth and others for bringing this together.
Thanks, Kathy. And I really am glad you made it and you were able to get here. So I really appreciate it. And I think that I mentioned earlier, but I see Travis is here from the University of Iowa. And so this is, again, one where Steve talked about eliminating unnecessary redundancies. This is where we're partnering. We're reaching out to other academic. I reached out to Texas A&M, to Rice University, who are all doing work for the Army. And I think if we just say, all right, what can we do together? What do you have as a specialty? We'll build into that. What do we have as a specialty? And not fight each other. We all benefit, and surely service members benefit. And I think that's what it's really all about. So Travis, when your face popped up, I thought I would just take a second to acknowledge that's, again, NC Comp. Steve talked about brag start, going NC wide. I think this thing eventually becomes the whole country. And we just have
Dennis,
people of like minds working together.
thanks for the quick shout out. We just had a recent visit to our campus from the U.S. Senator from Iowa, Senator Ernst. And we do a lot of work with the Army combat fitness tests through the Center for Initial Military Training, and Major General Hibbard was out. And it's the ACFT work that we're doing with our virtual human models. And then they were asking about, hey, have you supported some of our first Spark facilities? We're doing some work in the state of North Carolina. Do you have any support mechanisms? And we were quickly able to reference all the work that RTI is doing, and yeah, we're read in, sir. And they're just surprised that outside of any formal direction that there is emerging kind of a self-governed community based on let's improve life for the warfighter during and after service, and let's try to reduce injuries, optimize performance. And so it's a groundswell, not really being directed because of pots of gold at the end of the rainbow, but because we really care about the work that we're doing. So I appreciate being included in the shout out. Thanks, Dennis.
Yeah, Travis, thank you so much. And so you had Senator Ernst, and we have Congressman Price and Hudson. We got some power behind us. This is good. This is very good. So appreciate the support from Washington. Folks, we had Murphy came in another time now, so we've gone late with the video, and we now have an issue, I think, and maybe Lindsay, we could explain what folks need to do, because we have about 10 minutes left, and we did want to open it up if folks had questions, or Travis, like your comment was really greatly appreciated. So Lindsay, how are we going to be able to do that now? Are we able to have people put things in the chat, or do we need to let them come off mute like Travis did and ask their questions? Over.
I am seeing some questions in the chat, so it looks like folks are able to enter questions there if they would like. However, if you do want to raise your hand, we can take you off of mute and let you ask your question if you are having trouble with the chat. But it looks like it is working. One just came in. So I can start with those that we have tracked in the chat, if that works, Dennis.
Let's do that. Thank you.
Sounds good. Awesome. So one touches just a little bit on something that Congressman Hudson actually mentioned before. So maybe we can just reiterate on it. But is NC Comp looking to cover all total force fitness domains, like the preservation of the force and family pillars, or are we just focusing on physical, mental, and medical?
Wow. So that's a great question. Didn't I ask for like an easy one first? No, I'm kidding. So that's a great question, because we are being holistic, and this is where the services again are in a little bit of their own stovepipe, right? So Total Force Fitness has 7, 9, I forget how many different methods of fitness, including spiritual, nutrition, some things like that. The Army has 3. The Air Force, I think, has maybe 5, or some of them have adopted Total Force Fitness. So there's not one agreed upon in the DoD. So what we did is we tried to go for simplicity. And we think that spiritual, nutrition, sleep, all these things feed into one of the 3, or in a lot of cases, we're doing this holistically with physical, cognitive, and psychological, because things impact all three. So if I'm strong spiritually, I'm going to be better physically, mentally, cognitively, and psychologically. If I'm getting good nutrition, I'm going to be better on all three domains, right? So I think there's an interaction. So yes, if you're doing one that wasn't mentioned as physical, mental, or mental being mental, cognitive, or psych, we want to hear from you. And we want to use the technology we have to address service member health and performance. As I said, it's everything that lets them be healthy and accomplish their mission. Over. Great question. Thank you.
Very good. Awesome. This one should be a bit easier for you.
That was a good one.
Question, a couple questions that have come up are just around if someone is interested in partnering or having their business join NC Comp, how could they go about doing that? Where can they get information, and who should they get in touch with?
Okay, that's an easy one. So we have a website, and the easiest way to do it is Google RTI, because we host it as one of the members, NC Comp, and it will pop up. And if you have any other issues, I'm D. McGurk at rti.org. We have a member coordinator provided, thankfully, by Geneva, Mary Kate Stuckey, who I'll have her reach out to you. We'll set up a meeting. And again, what we ask people to do is we ask you to sign an NDA so people are comfortable sharing their intellectual property, because that's important. And then we ask you for a quad chart so we can let people know what are you bringing to the table, and we can link you up as teams when we see opportunities or when we're trying to create an opportunity. We want to know what your capability is so we can link you with somebody else who your capabilities are complementary with. So again, if you Google it, and if you have an issue, again, DMCGURK at rti.org. Thanks.
Thanks, Dennis. One last question. How does NC Comp complement the research that the Department of Defense is already doing?
Oh, great question. So this is, again, somebody caught something I should have mentioned in my intro. So we are sure as heck not competing. We are trying to be additional bandwidth. So again, I worked in an Army lab. I was at the Walter Reed Army Center of Research for 8 years. So I know what our DoD challenges are. I know the bandwidth. I know the stovepipes they face. And we are trying to work with them. We've had lots of discussions with the United States Army Research Institute for Environmental Medicine. I know they're also working with the University of Iowa, Travis. So we have the people who are planning human health and performance. We're working with CCDC Soldier Center. We've reached out to them. And we need to build those relationships, because we, again, want to work together and increase the bandwidth and fill each other's gaps, and certainly not try to do work that they're already doing at one of the DoD labs, be that AFRL, the Air Force Research Lab, or work funded by the Office of Naval Research. And you just reminded me, I should say this again, and Steve caught me for doing this. I didn't mention Seymour Johnson. So we have Air Force here in the state of North Carolina, and we care about Air Force health and performance, because guess what? They're humans, right? They're service members. And Marines and soldiers, I will tell you from data I used to collect, they're a lot similar. There's some cool, service differences, but there's a lot of similarities in what they do and some of the things they face. So we're looking at the Navy, at the Army, at the Air Force, and at Marines. Sorry, I kind of added on to the question, but appreciate that question. Over.
Awesome. And one more just came in. Do you foresee any unique cybersecurity requirements?
Unique. I don't know that we're going to have unique, but I know we're going to have ubiquitous, because especially, right, there were examples a couple years ago where literally people were wearing wearables, right? And they were running around in Afghanistan, and somebody published and showed a picture of people running around one of the airfields. So we know cyber is huge. So data is extremely powerful, but you're never going to get data if you cannot assure people that data is secure. So yes, we have some groups within NC Comp whose cybersecurity is in one of their strengths. But we're, again, if folks have that capability, bring it on. Because again, we're looking to be able to build the strongest team possible, right? And we're also looking to have, if you have a capability, but you haven't yet done the DoD, maybe we can partner with you with somebody who has a similar capability, it's worked at the DoD, and they need bandwidth. So it's, again, that win-win, and then the whole most important service members win. But yeah, cybersecurity is hugely important. I don't know if it'll be unique other than when it becomes the Internet of Bodies and everybody's data seems to be everywhere. But that's the same with sensor data, right? The services are talking about everything's going to be a sensor, and they're going to have huge amounts of data. And oh, by the way, they're working on how to integrate that. And there are some, but we could do a lot more efforts for how do we improve the human who has to be the decision maker at the end of whatever the AI feeds them. They still have to say it's time to fire or not fire, or I should go save somebody because they're still alive or not. So I think that's one of the areas NCCOM can really help in. Over.
Great. As a provider embedded within the Department of Defense, how can we become more involved with NCCOM, RTI, FBRI, or other partners?
Yeah, again, if you go to the website, we have a little form you can fill, and I will guarantee you, because we've done a ton of them, we will reach out to you and set up a meeting, especially if you're an embedded provider, because you're right there where the needs are. As was nicely said by Kate C. Boutwell from Bionica, we're looking to hear what you need, so we don't build it and hopefully you'll come. We want to address what that need is, and again, Steve's FBRI in Geneva has been doing that. So we'd love to talk to you. Love to have you on the team, or let's be honest, we're being on your team. Let's do it mutually. Over.
Very good. It looks like those are all the questions that were in the chat so far. I know some folks were having issues with it, so if anyone did want to raise their hand, we have a couple minutes left. We'll also be sharing this presentation out after the event, so if questions arise, later, please reach out.
Okay, we have, can you unmute whoever's hands are going up? I'm not able to see those.
It looks like Glenn Hodges, I think you're unmuted.
Nice to see another familiar name. Hi, Glenn. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was curious, just for since we have a couple of representatives on the line, if there was any movement at their level or any visibility on their level to try to coordinate the various service efforts in this area, because as you've highlighted and we've seen, at least across the Army, we're not coordinated, and I know and you know that the Air Force and other services are duplicating efforts. Just curious to see if there's any OSD level effort to try to coordinate, consolidate efforts in this area. Over.
So hopefully another hand I see go up, they might want to answer that, or I have an answer, but I want to defer to those who are in the services currently. Over. So Glenn, again, yours is a great question, and we can give you what we're thinking. I think it's a gap we've seen, and one that NCCOM can and our teammates can hopefully help fill, because there are commonalities and there are some redundancies, and we are talking to ONR and AFRL and in the labs that are out there doing the work, NHRC, NMRC, all the MRDC labs, and if anybody needs, I could throw out lots of other acronyms. I spent 25 plus years in the Army. It's sort of what we do. I think that's one we'll take a good note of and see, because at the DoD level, I'm not tracking anybody doing it. I know when I was in uniform and I was running the military operational medicine research program, I was trying to do it with wearable data, but nobody's doing it that I'm tracking for all of human health and performance, particularly human performance. Others, thoughts, comments? Over.
Yeah, Dennis, Steve here. I have a thought on that. That was a wonderful comment, and that's one of the things the Fort Bragg Research Institute set out to do when we first built ourselves, was to ensure that we at least advertise what the services are doing, so we can at least attempt to offset redundancy or limit redundancy. But the services like to do what the services like to do, and we're not going to be successful doing that all the time. But one of the great opportunities to do that, to share that information, is the Warfighter Symposium that occurs annually now. We're in our, 6th, 7th year. Mary Beth, help me out here. But the Warfighter Symposium is an excellent opportunity to share information with your sister services. The speakers that traditionally speak at the Warfighter speak across the services, so we don't specifically focus on one service over another, and all the services are well represented at the Warfighter Symposium. And putting the word out on the street will help that event become one of the premier military medical events akin to MHSRS or SoftWorks or you know, SOMA or any of the others that go on. And a couple of them, fortunately, also occur in North Carolina. But the Warfighter Symposium is an excellent place to share that kind of information. And it's coming up.
Yeah, folks, and I'll just throw that because I think we're going to have to wrap up because we're over time. But we really wanted to do this in person and bring folks in from across the state to just get to save some face-to-face contact and bring in our stakeholders, our potential funders, and show them how great North Carolina is. Couldn't do it. It's the same for the Warfighter Symposium. You know, we all know that the enemy gets a vote, and unfortunately, COVID got to vote in us having to do this meeting virtually. So if you have questions, Lindsay will capture all those and make sure we respond back to folks with answers. Really appreciate everybody's time. I'm not sure if Congressman Price and Hudson are still on, but guys, thank you. And thank you for staying so long. Really do appreciate your support. Everybody have a super rest of your Thursday. Thanks so much. Please keep in touch. Over. Actually, out.